Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, and so glad to have you along with us. How was your week? Did you get a chance to get out and do anything fun? Anything in the outdoors? Well, the weather roller coaster continues, doesn't it? I mean, we always expect that this time of year, but it's been an interesting winter season. I was talking to a guy the other day about, and obviously I agree with this, and I think anybody's going to have to agree with this year, that the folks who rely on wintertime for their business, or at least a significant part of their business, they're hurting this year. There just wasn't much of a winter. If you needed snow, if you needed ice, it was a disappointing year. So my heart goes out to those folks, because at this point, it's just not going to happen. Oh, so what have I been up to? This last week for me has been pretty much consumed with our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction, which was last weekend at this point, and it was another wonderful event. This is something our church does as a fundraiser for the church and school. This is the 7th year we've been doing it now, and it just continues to grow. I'm absolutely convinced the event has been blessed by God, and we just have a great time. And once again this year, it was just wonderful. So many of my friends, the people that I work with and the people who are my friends, stepped up to support this event. I'm not even going to go through the list right now because I'll leave somebody out, but not only did they support in donating services and product, but also in bidding on items. Every year I have people who bid on my fishing trips who would be able to fish with me for free, and yet they bid a bunch of money to go fishing just to help out the cause. So it's that type of an event. I just want to thank everybody who was involved, all the volunteers at Trinity who put this thing on, the people who showed up, the people who supported us. We do appreciate it so very, very much. Thank you. Now, because I've been pretty much consumed with the Trinity event, our next event has kind of snuck up on me, and here's what it is. Another Wednesday night live at the LumberJack Restaurant in West Branch, coming up Wednesday the 20th. If you'd like to join us, love to have you there. Call for reservations, 989-343-0892, 989-343-0892. If nobody answers, let the phone ring until it picks up. Leave a message. Give them your name, how many in your party, and a phone number so they can call you back. Now, this event is free. We don't charge anything for this. But I would expect, you'd buy a dinner or something from the LumberJack Restaurant while you're there. Would appreciate that very much. I'm not sure exactly who's going to be joining us at this event. I put out invitations to several people, several of my advertising partners, and we'll see who'll be joining us. But I'd love to have you there. That's Wednesday night, March 20th at the LumberJack Restaurant, the Forward Corporation, LumberJack Restaurant in West Branch, 989-343-0892 for reservations. Our live event starts at 7 o'clock, as all of the Wednesday night lives do. I would encourage you to get there about 5:30, so you have a chance to eat and get settled in before the fun starts. Speaking of fun in West Branch, this is a ways off, and I want you to put this in your calendar if you are interested. The first annual Avery Outdoors golf outing will be at the West Branch Country Club Monday, July 29th. Now, it is too early to start signing up for this. If you want to be involved as a sponsor, a whole sponsor or something, you can send me an email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Again, too early to sign up for that event, but I'm just asking you to put it on your radar, to put it on your calendar if you're interested. Monday, July 29th at the West Branch Country Club, obviously, in West Branch. I was talking about the weather roller coaster, the one day last week when it was so warm. My neighbor, an unnamed neighbor, fired up his lawnmower. I thought, okay, that's too much. That's just going over the top, okay? We don't need to run lawnmowers in early March. Speaking of this time of year, it is time to get your new fishing license. Now, your current license is good through the end of the month, but you can buy your new license now if you want. What is it, $26 for an all-species resident fishing license? And yet people gripe about the price? What can you do for 20? And I could get mine for 11 if I wanted as a senior. I'm not a big fan of senior prices. I don't think just because somebody has reached a certain age that they should be gifted a discounted price on something over other hardworking people. I don't buy into that concept. I don't like senior discounts. I don't like senior breaks on prices. If a service or a good is worth X amount of money to a 50-year-old or a 30-year-old, why is it not worth the same amount to a 65 or 70-year-old? It should be. Anyway, $26 for an all-species fishing license for the entire year. What can you do for a year and have that much fun for that much money? There's nothing. You can't. Now, I realize if you buy, 3, 4, 5 baits, stick baits, you're going to spend more than $26. So, yeah, the amount of money you have in your fishing is a lot more than that $26 license. So don't gripe about the price of the $26 license. Fish any species, any water, all year for $26. Speaking of licenses, there is a new license in effect here in Michigan for hunting and fishing guides. This just went into effect. It is $150 for a 3-year license. A lot of people don't like this. They think it's another money grab by the DNR. Now, coming up here later in the hour, we're going to talk about this a couple of times. First with Seth Herbst of the DNR, and then later with Justin Tomei of MUCC. MUCC was one of the groups that was pushing for this. If you are a licensed charter captain, you are exempt from this because you're already licensed and already paying. The hunting and fishing guide license is not nearly as involved as a Coast Guard charter captain's license or a captain's license. I don't know. I think that it's not ridiculous to expect that if somebody is taking people out hunting or fishing for money, that they would have a certain amount of proficiency and accountability. And for the people who want to do that and have those qualifications, $50 a year, if you're doing it professionally, I don't think that's too much. I don't think that's going over the top. If you're going to take people out hunting or fishing on inland lakes and rivers, I think it's kind of cool that you would want to be licensed to set yourself apart from the others who are just doing it for fun. But that's just me. Did you see the Fred Bear celebrations online? They had a big Fred Bear birthday celebration last week in Grayling. I posted, in honor of Fred's birthday, I found some of my old pictures and I posted them. It's always nice to see those. Picture of me and Fred. A picture of a young, dark-haired, thick head of hair, Avery, sitting next to Fred Bear, and a bunch of pictures I took while I was with him. It was very, very cool. As I look at my career, the highlights of my 50-year career now, almost 50, now 45 years, if that wasn't number one, it was certainly top 3. To get a chance to meet Fred Bear and sit next to him and talk with him and interview him, boy, that was right at the top. Certainly right at the top. Okay, I did see something pretty disturbing this week. Maybe you saw it as well. This is a letter to the editor in the Detroit Free Press. The headline says, Michigan coyote hunts are gruesome killing contests. Now, this is not a news article. This is a letter to the editor, but I want to read an excerpt from it just to remind you of what we're dealing with. A lady named Lauren wrote to the Free Press, and they published this. Michigan's coyotes are already being ruthlessly hounded, baited, snared, trapped, lured by electronic devices that mimic sounds of pups in distress, and gunned down in gruesome killing contests throughout much of the year. Now, this is in reference to the plan to stop our year-round coyote hunting season, take it back to, 8 or 9 months or something like this. I read you this just to remind you that there's a certain and significant percentage of our population who looks at what we're doing in a different light from how you and I look at it. So as a result, we need to continue to portray ourselves as the positive and responsible stewards of the resource that we are. A lot of people look at us and think we're bloodthirsty killers. We are not. We are stewards of wildlife. But we need to continue to portray ourselves that way. In person, online, on social media. Just remember, everything you post out there can come back to hurt us. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, after the break, Stacy Skaggs, a guy I met at our Trinity dinner, talking about getting ready for the turkey season. Then Seth Herbst. Actually, I'm moving up the Ask Avery segment this week. I thought, I'm not locked into that second hour, so I'm putting it in the first hour. Ask Avery with Seth Herbst of the DNR regarding that new fishing and hunting guide license. In our second hour, Lance Valentine, Justin Tomei. And in our third hour, John Ozoga on deer management in Michigan. All that plus Dixie Dave coming up this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry on WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Premier Maritime Training. If you've ever wanted to get your captain's license, I think this is your best bet. Captain John Littlefield taught my captain's class, and he can help you become a licensed captain as well. Check out the website, pmtcaptains.com, for more info. That's pmtcaptains.com. John has classes across the state, so I'm sure you can find one in your time frame and in your geographic area, something that will work for you and your schedule. Again, that's pmtcaptains.com. I told you about our big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction last weekend, and it was a wonderful success. I really, it's just a great event. And one of the things I love about the event is getting to meet, a lot of my friends, people I haven't seen for a while. For example, like Johnny Bowler, the Bear Whisperer, came down from up north from the Yoop, and it was nice. But also meeting new people. Stacy Skaggs is the guy who I never met before. But he came up to me and we started talking, and it was like, wow, this guy, he really, really knows his stuff. Now, he happens to be working with Scott Keatsman over at Linwood Taxidermy, linwoodtaxidermy.com. But his background is very broad and very impressive, and I thought this guy would be a great guest for the radio show. And he says, yeah, I can join you. So here is Stacy Skaggs on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Stacy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. It was nice to see you at the Trinity event. Thank you for coming out and supporting us. You've got quite a background there, Stacy.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a legend in my own mind.
Aren't we all?
We all are.
No, but tell me, I mean, you've done all kinds of things. You're working in taxidermy now, but you've guided turkeys across the country. You're intimately involved in white-tailed deer. I mean, pretty cool.
Well, thank you. I've been very fortunate and I've been very blessed to have the opportunities and the stuff that I've done. It's just been a roller coaster ride. It's up and down, from having a TV show like yourself, getting involved with the farming of deer, raising deer from little fawns all the way up to watching them breed and selling them and guiding hunts and getting hooked up with outfitters all across the world, from Africa to New Zealand to Alaska, being able to chase animals and help people get on animals for the first time. But if I couldn't do all that, all I would do is turkey hunt. I absolutely physically am ate up with turkeys. That is my thing. And I think we talked on Saturday night, and I think you kind of got the feeling that turkeys were pretty big in my world.
Yes, and they're like my number two, right? I mean, bear my number one, turkey's number two, certainly. But I haven't had the chance to travel the country guiding for them like you have. What was that like? What's that been like?
It's a long 10-week process. We start in Florida on March 10th for Osceolas. And the thing about Osceolas is if you want to shoot a true Osceola that's going to be recorded into the Grand Slam books, it has to be south of Jacksonville, Florida. Anything up in the Panhandle is classified as an Eastern. So we started down in Florida on the 10th, 15th. Then we'd run up into Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee. We'd head to Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, South Dakota, Wyoming. Then we would swing back east, hit Indiana, sometimes Missouri, and then finish up here in Michigan. And you would think by the time I got back to my home here in Michigan, I did not want to hear a gobble. I do not want to see another bird die. But the day I get home the next morning, I'm finding out who has a tag. Okay, I'm still on this turkey roll. Who's got a tag? Who wants it filled? Let's go find some birds. It's a awesome experience. But boy, it takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of waking up at 4 a.m.
Is hunting across the country, hunting these different species, is it basically the same as hunting turkeys here in Michigan, or is it a whole different deal?
Every place is different. Florida is very tough. The Osceolas are a very tough bird to hunt. They're not very vocal at times. They'll tree roost 2-3 times. You can get a good location where they are. Well, then when they hit the ground, hardly ever will they talk. A good buddy of mine from Louisiana, he's been on many turkey hunts with me in Florida. To this day, he's shot 4 or 5 with me, and not one of his turkeys has come in gobbling. Literally has just came in silent. And I think the biggest mistake a lot of turkey hunters make when they're turkey hunting is they don't give it enough time. They get a bird to gobble, they get a quick response, they give it 15, 20 minutes, the bird shuts up. Well, okay, he lost interest. Let's get out of here. Let's go set up on another spot. The problem is, if it's an older bird, a 3, 4, 5-year-old bird, one of the birds that I'm looking for, he's been called to. He's probably been shot at. He's been around the block. He's coming in quiet. If I got a bird going, we sit there for at least 45 minutes. Even if he's 250 yards, whatever, we give him time to come in. Because most people, he stops gobbling. He's run a series of calls. Okay, he lost interest. No, he didn't. He's just smarter, and he's just taking his time. Because you have to understand something that a lot of people I don't think realize this in the turkey woods is opposite of the deer woods. The toms strut, gobble, carry on, act all big and bad because they're bringing the hens to them. So when he's out there gobbling and he's strutting and he's putting on a show, technically I'm supposed to come to him. So it's a standoff. Who's going to win the standoff? And again, if he's a smarter bird, he's going to come in quiet. And for example, in Texas has more turkeys than I think they do people. You know, you go out, I mean, there might be 15, 16 gobblers in a roost. And the whole area just lights up with these birds. And they hit the ground and they just come running. You know, them are your Rios. You go up to Kansas, Oklahoma, again, you're getting your Rios. Some parts you're going to get your Easterns. And then you go to Wyoming, totally different. And then you come back home to Michigan, totally different. So every place that I hunt and guide and take people hunting, it's a little bit different. But I will say the hardest birds to kill are definitely the Osceolas in Florida, hands down.
Really?
They're the most challenging.
Is it too early here in Michigan to start scouting? Because, you know, these birds where we see them right now may not be in the same place in a few weeks when the season starts.
Well, no, it is not too early. I went for a ride again this morning just to find out where the birds are. We really haven't had a winter here. So the birds aren't doing their normal thing. Where they are right now, there's a pretty good chance they're going to be there come turkey season. I have cameras out. I have cell phone cameras out right now running to catch birds traveling to and from. And again, I'm very fortunate. I do a lot of driving, a lot of scouting. I know where a lot of birds just typically naturally hang out through the past, 10, 15, 20 years. Generally speaking, there's going to be birds in this area. Are you going to get a bird to answer you every morning? Probably not. But there's birds there. And you can't kill a turkey in the woods if there's no turkeys. So it's just like anything else. You got to put a lot of windshield time in. Find them, knocking on doors, looking at your Hunt Onyx maps, finding out whose property is where. And once you find it, stick with it. Because if there's birds there now, there's probably going to be birds there in April.
And you said something that is so simple and so basic, but I've never even thought of it before. We got trail cameras out for deer hunting, and I see birds on my trail cameras quite often. But I've never thought of actually moving some of those cameras over to my turkey hunting property and setting them out to use them to scout for turkeys. I never thought of that before, Stacy. That's stupid, but I never thought of it.
Well, it's, through these years of trial and error, I've learned and made a lot of mistakes. And I try to take people out and I try to show them where I've made the mistakes and don't do what I've done. Let's do it like this, because I've learned through the years of what to and what not to do. But trail cameras, let's face it, Mike, they've changed the game of everything from deer hunting to bear hunting to elk hunting. I mean, there's trail cameras in New Zealand. There's trail cameras in Africa. I mean, they got cameras everywhere. I mean, I'm paying monthly for all these cameras. Well, why not set them up? Let's just see what we get. Now, I don't get turkeys every day. Some places I do get turkeys every day, and that's good. But at least I have an idea there's birds there.
Yeah.
But yeah, trail cameras, very, very, very handy little tool.
And I'm sitting here mulling this through as we're talking to. Maybe the reason I haven't done that is I can do that windshield time you were talking about. I got a couple of farms I can just drive by, and if I can see birds out there, so okay, I know they're around, so maybe I don't need to go to that level of detail. But I'm so geeked about this upcoming turkey hunting season. Let me ask you this, Stacy: are you one of those guys who will go out and roost or go after roosting birds, or do you wait until mid-morning and go out?
Well, as I get older, I get smarter, and I really, really like to sleep in, and I like breakfast. So no, I very seldom ever roost hunt. And the reason for that is there's 2 or 3 reasonings, but you can sit on a road, on a piece of property, and watch 4 longbeards go up to roost. You do not see a hen for a half mile. And you're like, this is going to be a slam dunk. We're going to come in here in the morning. They're going to pitch down. We're going to kill them. You go in there at 4:30 in the morning, you wait, and all of a sudden you hear that. And you look at each other and go, where'd that hen come from? And then all of a sudden there's 2 hens, then there's 4 hens. And I don't care how good your decoy is, you're not going to pull that tom from live hens. So I just wasted all that time. So I get up in the morning, I even tell my clients this. I say, just chit-chit-chit-cha, relax. Let's have some breakfast, have some coffee. We'll go out, we'll start driving around. When we start seeing lone gobblers in fields, 9:30, it's game time. Because for 2 reasons. Number 1, he's pulled off of his hens. Number 2, there's a lot less people out in the woods because everybody gets up there just hell-bent to get out there first thing in the morning. I've been there. I've done it. And the hunt gets blown. They go back home. Well, that's when I take people out. Let's go. Most of my birds are shot between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. If we strike a bird at that time, we're going to kill that bird.
I think most of my birds have been later in the morning, too. I will routinely go out there, but I hunt differently, right? I bow hunt over decoys usually, but I set up in one of my primal Wraith 270 blinds, and I just kind of wait them out. I'm pretty patient when it comes to turkey hunting. I'll go out there early, and if I'm lucky, I'll get a bird first thing. But more than often than not, like you say, Stacy, it'll be a mid-morning thing. If I just sit there, drink some coffee, maybe take a little nap, mid-morning those birds will start to wander, and then they become really good targets. Hang tight, Stacy. Talking to Stacy Skaggs. Stacy's a hardcore turkey hunter, a turkey guide. He's also a taxidermist. He's working at a Linwood Linwood Taxidermy right now, linwoodtaxidermy.com. Got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. More questions when we come back about this springtime season coming up that I just love so very much. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK. That's 95.3 FM. You can hear us in the Thumb in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on WKNW 1400 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. Oh, I got to get it. You know this sound right here. That's the sound of the Rapid River knife being opened as I pulled it out of my pocket. I carry this thing with me every day, all day. I just think a knife is a great tool, and I don't think there's a better knife you can get here in our great state of Michigan than a handmade, maybe even a custom-made knife from the folks at Rapid River. If you get a chance, stop by their showroom just east of Rapid River on US 2. It's a very, very impressive place. You can... Beautiful outdoor experience. Lots of mounts, great selection. You can watch your knife being made. You can get it engraved while you're there. Rapid River knives are guaranteed for life. If you can't make it to the showroom, go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.us, and you can order one there, rapidriverknifeworks.us. I hope to be using my Rapid River this spring once again to clean, to field dress a turkey. I did last year. I'm thinking this year, too, especially with the ZZ season that it's so long. I mean, you can really work that into your schedule. Stacy Skaggs is a hardcore Michigan turkey hunter, but he's also guided birds all across the country. All right, Stacy, give us a few tips here, just some basics. What should we keep in mind as we start to think about getting ready for this season coming up?
Well, I think don't overthink it. Like I said before, you want to be patient. The biggest thing that I can tell you is setup. Setup. I mean, there's a lot of different variables, decoys, no decoys, 2 callers, 1 call, 2 people. But one thing that a lot of people do, and they do it, and I get it, and I've done it, is they set up on the edge of a field. And they put their decoys out in the field. And why do people set on the edge of a field? For visibility. They want to be able to see almost 360 degrees around them. Well, you put your hen decoy out there, you got a bird going, he pops out at 100 yards, and he's strutting, he's all big and bad, and he's giving the show. But don't forget, technically, he's out there to get that hen to come to him. And after 10 minutes, that hen doesn't move, and he kind of loses interest, and he backs off of it. And everyone's like, oh, man, I don't know, he's been called to. No, what you needed to do, if you have a bird going, is set up in the woods. It's kind of like a game of hide and seek. Okay, you're hiding, you want him to seek you. So don't put your hen where she's so visible that he can pop out at 100, 200 yards and just be crazy calling, and you're all, oh yeah, there we go. No. Be back in the bush. Get yourself in some timber. Make him come to you, because she's supposed to come to him. And if it's a 2-year-old bird, he's probably going to come running in. But once you get to those older, more mature birds that have been around the block, they're going to be a little bit smarter. They're going to know, well, we played this game before. I watched Joey get shot the other week doing this, so I'm going to stand back here and just see what happens. A lot of different setups. You can definitely overcall a bird. I call maybe every 5 minutes. If I got a bird going, what I do, Mike, is I like to call take their temperature. If I hit a series of calls, 2-3 seconds go by, he pounds me, he's lukewarm. I run a series of calls. As soon as I stop, he hammers me, he's hot. I run a series of calls, he cuts me off. He just, that bird is boiling hot. That bird's fired up.
That bird's yours.
That's the bird. That bird is the one I want. And a lot of times when I'm with somebody, they'll want to jump right down on a tree and get set up. I'm like, whoa, bump the brakes. We need to see what way he's coming in. Just stand right here by this tree. Let's get him going. And when you call, sometimes you got to hammer him, just and just get him fired up, get him excited. Don't just no. You got to get that bird fired. Get his head as red as a Coca-Cola can coming at you. Once I get a direction where the bird's coming, I'll put the hunter down. I'll jump 20 yards behind the hunter. Now, again, I don't have any decoys out because I want this bird to find me. So I keep going. If that bird hangs up 40 yards from me, he's 20 yards from the hunter. Chip shot, slam dunk, dead bird. So again, when you're setting up, think about it. That bird, just because you can see it a great big distance, that's good, but so can the tom. So you want to make it, the thicker the bush, the better. Get in there and try to set up on top of a knob, on top of a hill. Make that bird come up the hill to you to find you. Because if you're set up on the bottom, he can be up on the hill looking down at you. So make sure you get up on top of that hill and draw that bird up the hill. Have your guy sitting there, have you sitting there. When he peeks his head over the hill, like, hello, I'm here, you whack him right in the face. So you just want to make sure.
Stacy, I tell you what, you have succeeded in getting me even more geeked than I already was for this upcoming season. So I got to let you go, but I'd love to have you back on the show here again. Also, I think we need to talk about some trout fishing sometime too, right?
Oh boy, there we go. Trout and turkey. Now you're right in my wheelhouse.
All right, we will be sure to do that. Stacy, Skaggs, again, it was nice to meet you. Thanks for your support of our Trinity dinner. Appreciate you joining us on the show this week, and we'll talk again.
Well, anytime, Mike, just give me a call.
All right, I will do that. By the way, Stacy works at Linwood Taxidermy, linwoodtaxidermy.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery segment, a little bit out of order, but I thought, you know what? There's no reason that I have to put it in a specific time of each week's show. So it's coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on WKYO, 1360 AM, and WIDL, 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS, 1320 AM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette, WDMJ, 1320 AM as well. The Ask Avery segment brought to you each week by the good folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org, securitycu.org. This week's question comes from my buddy Craig Plowman. He says, Mike, I heard you talking about the new rules for guides, but what are the rules to be a first mate, and are they the same if you're on the Great Lakes or an inland lake or river? Well, so let's talk about that and more with Seth Herbst of the DNR. Seth was involved in kind of getting this program together. Seth, appreciate your time. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. So let's talk about this new license. Who does it apply to? Who does it pertain to?
Yeah, so the new license is part of the new inland sport fishing guide program. It's a program that stems from some state legislation that was passed last fall, and it will apply to anybody who's taking clients out for hire on any of our inland waters for guided fishing trips.
Not Coast Guard licensed charter captains. They're in, right?
They are in, yep. So as part of the conversation, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we were being cognizant of was overall cost and the financial burden. And we recognize that going through the U.S. Coast Guard to get your merchant mariner credentials is a little bit more expensive, or quite a bit more expensive than just getting an inland pilot's license. So there is a fee waiver for the individuals that have their captain's license issued to the U.S. Coast Guard. But I will point out that they still will be required to have a sport fishing guide license to operate on inland waters. It'll just come with a fee waiver.
Inland waters, does that include connecting rivers?
So the St. Mary's River, the Detroit River, those will all be classified under the Great Lakes Charter Boat Program.
So if somebody was fishing the Saginaw River and taking out clients, they need a guide's license because that's not a connecting water, right?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that, so I appreciate that. So what about Craig's question about first mates? Are they somehow included in this at all, Seth?
So the first mates themselves are not required to have a guiding license unless they don't have the actual captain that would be operating as the guide with them. So one of the things that really sparked this legislation was an interest in having increased credibility among the guiding community. And it was legislation that was supported and pushed by Michigan United Conservation Clubs and several other guiding clubs throughout the state, wanting to really make sure that there was increased requirements to ensure their clients were having a high quality experience as well as a safe experience. So some of the requirements here include making sure that sport fishing guides have first aid and CPR training, just in case something does come up and a health issue arises as they have clients out on the boat. But then the other aspect is they wanted to make sure that sport fishing guides and really hunting guides have a clean record in terms of following hunting and fishing regulations.
And thank you. You beat me to my next question. This does apply to hunting guides as well, correct?
It does, yeah. So, I'm in fisheries division and focusing on the sport fishing aspect of this program. But last fall, there was additional legislation that was passed for hunting guides as well.
And if I remember right, I think this is $150 for 3 years. How does somebody get this, Seth?
Yep. So you can go online. We have our website, or just Google sport fishing guides in Michigan. And there's an initial questionnaire that the sport fishing guides will need to complete. That'll then alert the department that they're interested in acquiring that license. We'll just make sure that the requirements are met, and then we'll allow that individual to purchase their license using our e-licensing platform or our new DNR Hunt Fish app.
And this went into effect March 1st?
March 1st, yeah. So March 1st was the statutory deadline for making sure that the licensing program was up and running. And as of today, I think we have roughly 250 individuals that have already applied for their sport fishing guiding license.
And real quick before I let you go, then, will there be a sticker on the boat or the vehicle, or is just a card that somebody will carry in their wallet?
This would just be something that the sport fishing guides would need to show to our conservation officers if they interact with them in the field. So nothing that would need to be displayed on the boat. Just, it's very similar to your standard recreational fishing license.
Gotcha. Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that. Seth Herbst of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We will be talking more about this in our second hour with Justin Tomei of MUCC. As Seth said, MUCC was one of the groups pushing this. And again, a big thank you to the folks at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org, securitycu.org. And thank you, Craig Plowman, for this week's question. I think, I like the ability to be able to move this segment around in the show. So we'll see. It'll usually be at the end of the second hour, but I will keep the option open of moving it around. I can't move the hours around, though. This is the end of hour one. Coming up after the break at the top of the hour, hour two of this week.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And I do think the best way to listen to this show, if you can, is on your local radio station, your local AM or FM station that you're used to listening to anyway. where you get your local news and your local weather and your local sports and your local talk shows, your local people. Well, those local stations are sharing part of their weekend schedule with me, and I appreciate it, and I would encourage you to listen to the show if you can on your local radio station. If you can't, if your local station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, it's nice to know there's a podcast version of the show available. You can hear the podcast version of the show, anywhere you listen to your podcast. I do put it on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's also on the Facebook page every week. It's on Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, now called X, LinkedIn, Apple Music. What is Apple Music called? I think still Apple Music. Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Player FM, Deezer, Odyssey, among others. And on YouTube even. I put a version of the radio show up on YouTube every month. So if you can't hear the radio show, please check out the podcast. I know podcast is getting absolutely huge. I love podcasts myself. I've been doing it for many, many years. In fact, when we're done here in the studio, Charlie, are you going to stick around for that podcast? You are. Okay. When we're done recording the radio show this week, we're going to record this month's Offshore Tackle podcast, this time featuring Ed Rutherford of Trout Scout Charters on Northern Lake Huron. Ed is one of the longest running charter captains on the Great Lakes. So we're going to talk to him about that. We're going to talk to him about the fishery and, of course, his relationship with offshore tackle. Another guy who has a relationship with offshore, a good friend of mine, Lance Valentine. Lance is one of my favorite guests. I have learned more about fishing and fishing electronics and the subtleties and nuances and trying to think outside the box in the world of fishing from my buddy Lance Valentine than probably anybody else. You can follow him online at teachinfishin.com, teachinfishin.com, and all over social media. You can find him this weekend at the big outdoor show in Grand Rapids as well. As we are talking with him now midweek, he's just setting up for the show, but he's decided to sit down for a few minutes and talk with me. And Lance Valentine, I appreciate it, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mikey. How are you?
I'm doing good. I think I'm going to come over and visit you guys this weekend.
We were driving over, and I was talking to my wife before I had to do the interview, and she said, "Is Mike going to be there this weekend?" So I'll tell her you're going to stop by and say hi.
I think I am going to do that. Yeah, that show holds a special place in my heart because 50 years ago, I used to go there with my dad. So to be able to come back there, now my dad's gone now, to be able to come back to the show, it's a pretty special show to me.
Yeah, it's a great show for us because it's a whole different customer base for us. It's all, all of our West Side friends, and we get a chance to come over here and talk about some East Side stuff and teach them a little about fishing the Detroit River. And we've got our custom line of tackle that always does well over here, and it's just it's a nice break. We don't get a chance to see our West Side friends too often during the year, so being here at the show is something that we always look forward to. That's
an interesting point, Lance. I hadn't really thought of this. A lot of the fishing that you do is on the east side, Saginaw Bay, Saginaw River, Detroit River, Lake Erie. So those west side anglers, I bet you they're really anxious to get that east side walleye info.
Yeah, we're able to come over here, and there's a lot of good fishermen over here, and anytime you can share what you do every day with a good fisherman who doesn't get a chance to do it every day. Obviously, there's a lot of things to learn, and we've learned a lot of things over here too. Coming over here, we've been coming over here for 20 some years now, and you get to know these guys over here on the west side. And they fish a little bit different over here. Fishing's a little tougher. They sure don't have the population of fish we're lucky to have on the east side, so they got to be a little more detail oriented, if you will. They got to pay attention to details, and you get a chance to talk to them, and you always pick up something. Anytime you talk to a good angler, you should have your ears open and understand that you can learn something from everybody. So we always look forward to it. It's always a good 4 days for us over here.
Well, and the cool thing about that downtown Grand Rapids venue is you can look out the window and see the Grand River and see people steelhead fishing there right next to the show.
Yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Distracting, is it?
Sometimes it can be distracting. Luckily, we're right in the middle of the show floor, so we can't see enough of it. But, Lance Key, I know you talked to Lance a couple times, but, I met Lance a long time ago, worked with his dad, Dave, at Berkeley Pure Fishing, and we'd come to the Grand Rapids show, and, Lance wouldn't show up till 11:30, 12 o'clock every day at the show booth because he was out steelheading every morning. So, yeah, it's a really cool place to come. Get to, every day we drive in every morning and drive past the Grand River, and we get to see people fishing. So, yeah, it's kind of nice. We'd like a little bad weather for show week. It kind of helps. People aren't fishing; they're probably going to come to the show, but it is a cool venue right here on the river.
So what is involved for you, Lance, in setting up for a show like this? I mean, I can tell right now, honestly, I know you well enough. I can tell you're a little distracted. What's going on right now?
So we just got here. And fortunately and unfortunately, our booth is kind of right in the middle. And a lot of folks set up on Tuesday. So we're trying to get got my wife in the truck right now unloading. We're trying to get the whole truck unloaded so we can get out of here before we get trapped in here with the truck. It is what it is. It's setup day of show week. It's always chaos. It's always a long day. It's always a little bit of work, but we've got good helpers. I got my wife Carol with me this weekend, and she's getting ready to yell and scream at a chair. She can't get out of the back of the truck, but we have, teamwork, and we just kind of all work together, and we just kind of take our time and get it done. So yeah, it's part of the thing, man.
Well,
it's part of doing what we do.
Given the fact that you're tied up right now, it makes me even.
You're good.
It makes me even appreciate our time here on the radio show even more, Lance. So thank you. I do appreciate that.
Well,
a little bit off topic, but it ties into a conversation I had at the end of the first hour of this week's radio show. I didn't realize that. I knew there was this new inland Michigan fishing guide license that was out there. I didn't realize that, if you were also a licensed charter captain, you also had to get that river guide license. Like you, Lance, that would apply to you too, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't know all the details. I know we could apply March 1st was the first day to apply. I sent my application in. I honestly don't even really know what it is.
Well, let me help you out here. Do you run any trips on the Saginaw River?
I don't traditionally, but that's becoming much more of an option as the winters change. Our season extends further into the winter and opens up earlier, so I probably will be. So obviously, I'm going to have it for that.
For that, you will. Actually, as I think about it now, for the Detroit River, you will not. For the St. Clair River,
Correct.
You will not. So you're good to go there. Unless you go up in the Saginaw or somewhere else I haven't seen you before, you should be good to go, buddy.
Yeah, but, it's one of those things. Look, I'm a full-time charter captain, so I'm not going to not get an extra whatever I have to have permit-wise, to limit me on where I can fish. So, like I said, the application day was March 1st. And we sent our application in that first day. So
you did? Okay.
Should have it here pretty quick. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So as soon as you
this is what I do, right?
Well, it is. So what you're going to do seminars this weekend at the show too, aren't you? I'm sure.
We have 2 seminars every day. We'll be on Lake Ultimate talking about Detroit River jigging. It's kind of one of the most popular seminars that we do with the Show Stand Gang. And we'll be on Lake Ultimate twice daily starting tomorrow. And it's always good. It's always good to get up there, be on the boat, talk about fishing Detroit River. It's easy to show when you're in the boat. Kind of one of the most important things about jig fishing is your rod angle. Your rod tip needs to be down, specific way of holding the rod, so you get a lot more sensitivity when you're jigging. And it's a lot easier to do in a boat than it is to do in the classroom. So being on the boat on Lake Ultimate is really cool. Get to drive the boat around. There's some trout in there that Thursday are pretty easy to catch. Friday a little easy, not quite as easy. By the time Saturday rolls around, they're a little stinky, and by Sunday they don't want to bite anything. So Thursday's always a fun day because we usually catch a few rainbow trout when we're on there.
Speaking of jigging, I was on the Saginaw River last week with our mutual friend, Captain Mark Panonzak of Real Fishing.
Yep.
And it made me remember that I don't jig fish enough anymore to really have a sense for it. I mean, I used to spend a lot of time jig fishing, and I felt I was okay. But Mark was up there in the front just beating the snot out of me, multiple fish when I'm trying to catch one. And it reminded me that jigging is not hard, but there is a rhythm and a finesse to it, isn't there?
Jigging's not hard, but it is complicated.
Thank you. That's the line I was looking for. Yes.
I know you were. I could hear your wheels spinning. I'm like, I know where he's going with this. It is, and it's the subtlety of jigging. It's usually once you get that first or second bite, you're you're kind of dialed in, but it's that first couple initial bites, first time, especially if you haven't done it for a while. There's definitely an art to it. There's an art to, keeping your line tight. There's an art to understanding the rhythm. Jig should be on the bottom.
Well, let's talk more about that. I hate to interrupt you here,
okay.
but we got to take a break. So let's follow up on this. After the break, you got 4 minutes off here now to get a bunch of work done. After the break, let's come back and talk more about this finesse of jigging for walleye. We're talking with Lance Valentine of Teachin Fishin, teachinfishin.com, teachinfishin.com. He is at the big Grand Rapids show this weekend. Stop by and say hi. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up after the break right here with Lance Valentine on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra, 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba, the Riviera of the North, on WCHT, 600 AM, 93.5 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based, family-owned Killer Food Plots, killerfoodplots.com. I had invited Rich Krazan of Killer Food Plots to join us at our Wednesday Night Live at the LumberJack Restaurant on the 20th, but he's tied up. He was on the show last week, but he will join us for future Wednesday Night Lives. I know you're not putting in food plots yet, but it's not going to be long now, is it? So I would encourage you to check out that website, killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com, to see what's out there. Get in touch with Rich if you need some help, because that season is just around the corner. And I will have him here on the radio show a couple of more times here over the next few weeks. Again, killerfoodplots.com. While you are online, please check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then jump on over to teachinfishin.com. Teachinfishin.com is the website of Lance Valentine. From there, you can get to all of his social media outlets, all of his live streams. He's with us now on the phone line. He's checking in, getting ready for the big Grand Rapids show. As you are hearing the radio show, he is doing seminars there, and he has a booth there at the show in downtown Grand Rapids. Lance, let's go back to this finesse of jigging. Jigging is a great way to target fish in the rivers in the springtime, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Most fish, especially as the water's cold, they're going to be, close to the bottom, staying out of the heavy current, usually hidden next to or beside something where there's a little bit of slack water, a little bit of a current break. And, you're dealing with heavy current. Detroit River, St. Clair River specifically, you're dealing with heavy current. Best way to keep a jig down to the bottom or lure down to the bottom is vertical jigging. You're just moving your boat, same speed as the current, keeping your line vertical straight up and down, and just slowly moving that jig up and down as you slide down current. And it looks natural to a fish. It looks like natural food coming to them, and it's a pretty easy way to, once you get dialed into the boat control and a little bit of finesse with the rod, it's fairly easy once you kind of understand it, and it's extremely, extremely effective.
I know the size of the jig, the weight of the jig is a factor, but is the shape of the jig also a factor as well?
Yeah, shape is huge, right? You want a jig that cuts through the current. Round ball jigs are not as efficient as some of the newer designs that have come out. And, we worked really hard, 15 years ago to design a jig that, has a pointed nose so it turns into the current, faces into the current, doesn't wobble back and forth. And then we put a lot of the weight of the jig on the back of the jig and the bottom of the jig. We call them cheeks. And what that does is the water hits that nose, it splits, it goes over, hits those cheeks, and actually forces the jig down. So our 3/4 ounce jig fishes like a 1 ounce. Our 1 ounce fishes like 1 1/4 ounce, just because of the way the current hits them. But whatever jig you're going to buy, round ball jigs, no matter what technique you're doing. Look, I don't care if you're casting, trolling. I don't care if you're fishing for bluegills. I don't care if you're bobber fishing for crappies. I don't care if you're vertical jigging for walleye. I don't care if you're kissing, weed edges for bass. A round ball jig should never, ever be your first choice. There are much better jigs for every situation. So buy the jigs that are designed specifically for whatever you're doing with a jig. You'll catch a lot more fish because you'll be a lot more efficient.
So are you Are you putting plastic on those jigs? Are you putting live bait? What are you tipping them with? Or what are you using?
Yeah, so I'm a plastic guy. I used to be a minnow guy. I am about a minnow. I think now we're going on year 13 or 14. So it's just plastics, but the shape of your plastic is a big deal. We fish 5 basic shapes, and the reason we do that is each one of those shapes represents a different style of bait fish, type of bait fish. And more importantly, each plastic has 2 characteristics, what we call fall rate, how fast it falls back to the bottom, and then what we call fall angle. Does it fall straight to the bottom, or does it kind of slide back down current a little bit? So as you adjust your shape, the longer, skinnier, and thinner the body is, faster it's going to fall, and the more straight down it's going to fall. As you get a fatter, bulkier, wider body, what's going to happen is it's going to fall a little bit slower, and it's going to fall a little bit down current. So that shape is much more important every day than the color is. So if you get the shape right, you can miss the color. If you get the color right and miss the shape, you're not going to catch any fish.
Do you put any scent on it at all?
I'm a big scent guy. Below about 55 degrees. I use Procure, Trophy Walleye, Garlic Nightcrawler are my 2 favorites, but I do use the Goby every once in a while. But yeah, I'm a big believer that scent does make a difference, especially in colder water. Now look, a scent product isn't going to get fish, to swim over to your, jig from 30 feet away. But it does give them that little last trigger when they get close to that jig. It smells right, and definitely when they chomp down on it, now they've got something that just kind of tastes right. It gives you that extra split second for them to hang on to your jig and you get a chance to set the hook.
What about a stinger hook?
Stinger hooks all the time. Never without a stinger hook. The key to a stinger hook is, tie it on good, heavy abrasion-resistant mono. Fluorocarbon sinks. Braid is too soft. You want a 14, 16-pound abrasion-resistant mono that hangs stiff. And the big key to stingers, don't hook the stinger into your body or your bait. Let your stinger hang. If you hook it into your bait or your plastic, the fish still has to move all of that bulk of the jig and the plastic to get in its mouth. If you let the stinger hang, they can actually suck in that stinger hook without having to move your presentation. So you get to catch a lot more fish if you just let that stinger hook just kind of hang off the back of your body.
I saw that for the first time fishing with Mark Panonzak last week. I had always put my stingers in the plastic or the minnow. So this is the first time I'd ever seen it. But the concept does make a lot of sense. Just leave it free hanging there.
Yeah, because now that's the lightest part of the whole presentation. The fish can actually move that stinger without having to move the jig, the body, that whole big presentation.
Okay, now we're going to get a little technical here. Are you
okay?
Are you bouncing that bait off the bottom? Are you slowly dropping him? And walk me through the finesse part of the technique.
So my typical everyday, let's just go jig fishing, is down to the bottom, tap the bottom, a slow lift up about 6 to 8 inches, and then a tight line drop to the bottom, tick the bottom, and lift it back up. So it's a constant cadence. Boom, there's the bottom. Boom, there's the bottom. Boom, there's the bottom. Boom, there's the bottom. Meaning that changes that cadence. Jig gets heavier, jig gets lighter, doesn't get to the bottom on time. Set the hook, because that's what fish are doing. Remember, when you're vertical jigging, your lure is not going through the water horizontally. When your line goes through the water horizontally, a fish grabs it, he pulls tight, your rod, jumps up and down. Hey, I got one. That doesn't happen when you're jigging. You're lifting and dropping that jig, and all a walleye's going to do is suck it in and stop it from falling. Or when it hits the bottom, he's going to get on top of it and pin it to the bottom. So all you're going to do is feel your jig get a little heavier, a little bit lighter, or not get to the bottom on time. That's a bite. That's a fish. You need to set the hook. So keeping a tight line is key. I see too many guys snap and their jig goes down on a slack line. Mm-hmm. You do that, walleyes can literally suck your jig in and spit it out before you even know you got a bite. So it's tight line up about 6 to 8 inches, tight line down to the bottom, tight line up, tight line down, always keeping that line tight. So anything that happens to that jig, any movement at all, you feel it through, again, braided line, no stretch line. And then I like short, stiff rods, so you feel that really subtle bite a lot better than you do with a soft, longer, softer action rod.
You talk about a fish being able to suck that bait in and spit it back out. I can't put my hands on this video anymore, but at one time years ago, I had some video of a walleye sucking in a jig, and I broke it down frame by frame, and it literally took a 1/10 of a second for that fish to suck that thing in. Boy, you got to react pretty quick.
It's faster than you snap your finger, And the one I remember back to, Ricky Clun was on in a swimming pool. Glenn Lau was filming, and Ricky Clun, one of the best bass fishermen that ever lived, throws a crankbait the length of a pool, cranks it in, and before it gets back to him at the pool, 4 bass sucked in that crankbait and spit it out, and he never fell a single one of them. So these fish, especially when they're below the jig like they are in river fishing, or if they come behind it like they do sometimes when you're trolling, they can grab a bait, suck it in, spit it out. And how does that happen? Because look at everybody here that's listening has dropped a crankbait on the carpet, and all 6 hooks are in the carpet.
Exactly.
How can a fish suck it in? How can a fish suck in a bait and not get hooked? But dang it, they do it. They do it every day.
When I hear you talk about your jigging technique, it really reiterates or brings home the fact that you want a little bit heavier jig so you can keep that constant contact with your bait.
Yeah. So the way I teach it is a bite is your jig just feels different. And then I say, the easier it is to feel your jig, the easier it is to feel something different on your jig. If you're fishing a lighter jig and you're constantly going, is that the bottom? Is that the bottom? Some of those are bites and you don't know it. Bottom should be instant. You should always be able to feel the jig. That's what that heavy jig does. And now a 1 ounce jig now weighs 1 1/8 ounce. That's a fish. 1 ounce jig now weighs 7/8 of an ounce. That's a fish. If you're fishing a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce jig, you really don't get that difference in feel because it's not as big of a deal as it is with a bigger jig. So you've got to be able to feel bottom. You got to be able to stay vertical. You got to be able to feel your jig. I don't care how big the jig is. Some of the guides are even going to 1.5 and 2 ounce jigs for some of their customers in the back of the boat, and they're still catching fish. So I think a heavy jig is definitely the way to go no matter where you're fishing.
And that's so interesting to me because early on, I remember fishing, the Saginaw River with Gary Roach years and years ago, and he's using an 1/8 ounce jig. You're talking about finesse, and I'm thinking, I can't even feel the bottom, Gary. How are you talking about finesse?
Exactly, and that's the thing. If you can't feel your jig and can't feel bottom, you can't catch a fish jigging. Now you can catch them on lighter jigs, but here's been the theory. The theory has been the lighter the jig, the easier it is for the fish to suck it in. I go the other way. Think about it. If you lift a 1 ounce jig and you start to let it fall to the bottom, it wants to go to the bottom. So as a fish is trying to suck that jig in, inertia is actually putting that jig in that fish's mouth. You've got a light jig, that fish tries to suck it in. That light jig is taking its time to fall. A heavier jig is actually falling into the fish, towards the fish, a lot faster with a lot more inertia than a light jig is. I think you get a lot more subtle bites and a lot more non-aggressive bites with a heavy jig than you ever do river fishing with a light jig.
Real quick before I let you go, early in the conversation, you talked about the angle of the rod. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So you can't jig sitting down. I'll make that simple. And you want to make sure that your rod tip is down. Your rod tip should be down at about a 45-degree angle. Hold the reel at your side. Rod tip should be down only about 4 or 6 inches off the surface. And here's the big thing. Rule in my boat, you never get your rod tip higher than the rod butt. So you don't lift the rod tip to jig. You set that angle, about a 45-degree angle with the rod tip down, and you just lift your arm. So now that whole 45-degree angle just lifts. Because if you start lifting your rod tip up and snap with your wrist, if you get a fish at the top of your stroke, you have nowhere to go to get any leverage to set the hook. So just set that angle, about a 45-degree angle, rod tip about 4 or 6 inches off the surface, and just lift your arm. You're just lifting that 45-degree angle. Now you've got all the arc of the rod to set the hook if you get a bite at the top of the stroke.
Lance, you are the man.
That's what I do, man.
Have a good show, buddy. I appreciate your time. If I get over there, I'll stop by and say hi.
Yeah, please do. Looking forward to it. And as always, I really appreciate having us on, Mike.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. Lance Valentine of Teachin Fishin. TeachinFishin.com, TeachinFishin.com. The guy can say more in one 10-minute radio conversation than I can come up with them on my own in a year of fishing on the water. TeachinFishin.com, TeachinFishin.com. Justin Tomei of MUCC after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 2 stations, the Twister 92.1 WTWS and 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, that's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, in fact, on WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Matt Smith Outdoors Realtor. Matt, a longtime friend of mine, a great guy. He's an expert at finding recreational properties and vacation homes, and he can help your family turn a dream into a reality. Learn more online at Matt Smith Outdoors. He's on Facebook and Instagram, again, as Matt Smith Outdoors. And by the way, If you're looking for a new home as your primary residence, Matt can help you out there as well. That's Matt Smith Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. And Matt, by the way, was at our big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction last week, and I thank you, Matt, for that. Okay, I was talking earlier in the show about this new commercial guiding license with Seth Herbst of the DNR, and he mentioned that MUCC was one of the groups that was pushing this. Justin Tomei is with MUCC. You've heard Justin here on the show before. Justin, welcome back, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. So a lot of things to talk about, I think, this time around. Let's start with this commercial guiding license. You guys at MUCC did indeed push this. What was the thinking behind it?
Yeah, so this started actually as a member resolution back in 1997. And the simplest way to boil it down was to prevent bad actors and poachers from posing as legitimate guides. It was something that had happened in the past in the state. And so the idea was you set a very kind of moderate threshold of requirements to become a commercial guide. It helps lend some legitimacy to the industry, and it keeps those bad actors from posing as legitimate guides. And when I say very moderate package, when this first was drafted, there were like insurance riders and some very stringent regulations and heavy fees. And now $150 for 3 years, can't be a poacher, can't be a felon. And when I say poacher, I mean like big violations, like possession of a protected species. And you're doing it on public land or public waters. And that's kind of the basic threshold of what it takes to be a guide now.
Well, yeah, we don't want people who are intentionally poachers. But, I mean, in theory, almost anybody, and any well-intentioned angler could find themselves with a fish that's a little bit short, or maybe you're out there on Saginaw Bay whaling the snot out of walleye and you didn't count real well and you got an extra fish. I mean, could that keep you from being a guide?
The limitations are drawn out in statute, and I don't have every line of it in front of me, but the idea behind it is the most stringent and strict and severe penalty. So severely going over bag limits, that could be a problem. Possession of a protected species, night hunting, it's the big stuff.
I got you.
A lot of those things are actually misdemeanors, and they don't necessarily rise. But the actual things that will prohibit you from being a guide are listed out specifically in the bill.
And Seth was telling us that if you're a licensed captain from the Coast Guard, if you're going to be on an inland lake or river, you would still need this, but the fee is waived. Is that how it works?
Correct. Yeah, that exemption was made because the requirements placed on those that operate in Great Lakes and connecting waters under the Coast Guard's authority already have a more stringent set of rules applied to them. So we didn't think the added fee was necessary for those people already participating in those acts. And
this applies for hunting too, not just fishing, right?
Yep, this also will apply to guides and hunting guides on public land. There are a number of other carve-outs as well. But yes, hunting guides on public land. Those exchanging services for some consideration of value.
Okay, so if you're going to take somebody out hunting or if you're going to take somebody out fishing, to me, I think it makes sense that there would be some level of accountability here. So no fish or game violations. What else? What else do you have to get this license?
You got to be first aid CPR certified, which probably costs you $100 for a 2-year certification on those. You got to have a base license if you're hunting, fishing license if you're fishing, a valid driver's license. There are some added fees for non-resident guides. And really that's about it. But some of the carve-outs that are important to note is, let's say you wanted to take me out on your boat and I threw you some money for gas. Voluntary sharing of expenses doesn't constitute a consideration of value. So buying your buddy lunch because he takes you out fishing or giving him some gas money, that doesn't do it. Taking somebody out on your private land doesn't require you to be a guide. And nonprofits, like if we do an R3 event to try and get new hunters, that we don't need to be guides to do that either.
I've heard some people say, well, this is just another way for the DNR to get more money, but there's not going to be that much money generated by it. And to me, the benefits far outweigh the downside of it. That's my personal opinion.
We would agree with you. We don't know how many guides operate, so it's hard to say how much money they will actually be bringing in. My best guess is it probably won't even cover the cost to do the program. But something that the DNR is going to get that I'd argue is more valuable than the money is there are some reporting requirements on these guides. And so the DNR is going to collect a lot of important biological data that they're not currently getting. That data is all protected from FOIA. There can be no individual information or anything like that given out in FOIA, so they're not going to give up your secret fishing spot. But they are going to collect a lot on harvest effort, harvest per catch unit, how many fish are catching, where they're catching them, and it's going to help with our fish and hunting management a lot.
Hang tight, Justin. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show, talking with Justin Tomei of MUCC, MUCC.org. More after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. You can hear us in Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM. And you can hear us, let's go north of the bridge. Let's go to Manistee, WTIQ 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your mid-Michigan tracker headquarters. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Boats are heading out of Linwood Beach right now. They're fishing for walleye on Saginaw Bay as you get ready to kick off the season. If you need to get your boat ready for the season, or if you're looking for a new boat, or if you're just looking for information, Linwood Beach Marina, a great place. Again, the website, linwoodbeachmarina.com. We're talking now with Justin Tomei of MUCC, MUCC.org. Justin, I find it interesting that, earlier we were talking about this commercial fishing and guiding license. You say that was a product of the process that you have at MUCC for letting your members dictate the direction you want to go, mandate the direction you want to go. Now, that commercial fishing and guiding was probably brought up at a convention years ago. Well, you're coming into a convention again very soon, right?
Yeah, we're leaving. Some of our staff's leaving for the Sioux tomorrow, and the rest of us will be headed up Friday for our weekend convention.
Any big issues on the agenda this time around, Justin?
Tons of them. We have quite the smattering. We will be taking up APRs for several this time. We have a boat registration fee increase resolution on the agenda. We've got some coyote hunting stuff, and we also have, smaller, more local or regional issues like changing some designations of certain parts of the Au Sable River. So we span the whole gambit this year.
Some things that come to my mind: the special mentored hunting bill.
Yeah. So that was a product of last year's convention. And what that is basically is we had some members that have a special needs son, and they were explaining there's a problem with current Michigan law where some kids can perform the physical tasks of hunting, well, adults too, not just kids, but they're not necessarily able to process the written hunter safety test. So we have a bill dropping hopefully next week that would extend the mentored hunting license indefinitely for those special needs individuals. Meaning that they would have to hunt within arm's reach or under the direct control of a mentor, so that they can they're able to hunt even beyond what the mentored license allows for them to hunt currently.
What about commercial fishing? Is there anything good at all on the commercial fishing front?
Actually, yeah. I do have a little bit of good news on that. So House Bill 5108 dropped last fall. That was terrible. It would have allowed for game fish to be caught in commercial nets. Conservationists across the state stepped up through our call to action, sent 85,000 emails to the Capitol, and basically killed that bill in its tracks. The good news is that we had been working with Representative Amos O'Neill. He's in Dem leadership over in Saginaw on a good commercial fishing bill. And that commercial fishing bill modernizes the industry, kind of updates a lot of the regulations, the way the industry works, but it keeps game fish out of those commercial nets. That bill also hopefully is dropping next week, probably before they go in spring break for sure, though, is our goal.
85,000 emails. That's pretty impressive.
It shut down some offices for a couple of days. Like, I got yelled at by a couple legislators because they were unable to do some of the other functions of their office as a result of conservationists across the state stepping in and saying this bill is not acceptable.
I love to hear that, though, because in today's world, so often we think that we as individual outdoors men and women, there's nothing we can do. It's a big machine we're working with, you know, DNR, NRC, legislature, even MUCC, all big, organizations there in Lansing. But to know that we actually do have an impact, or we can, that's pretty cool.
It's very powerful, and it's you absolutely can do it. Do not be afraid to act because you think that your voice will not be heard. As a result of this, I heard from individuals across the state that they got FaceTime, like face-to-face one-on-one time with their legislator as a result of them participating in our call to action. So it is never too late to get involved. You can always do something.
Wow, very cool. Hey, listen, and something coming up this summer. I mean, it's a ways off yet, but I'm encouraging people to put it on their calendars. Monday, July 29th, we're having a golf outing at the West Branch Country Club. And the cool thing about this is any proceeds we make are going to go to MUCC's youth camp. How cool is that?
That sounds awesome to me. The camp is a great place. I think we've put through 60,000 kids over the years. They get hunter safety, learn to shoot guns and bows, and a lot of our board members. Actually, my eye doctor is randomly an MUCC camp alumni. So it is great. We're excited that you're going to do this for us. We're excited to be a part of it. I like golf. I like smoking cigars, so I'm going to be there.
Excellent. I look forward to that Monday, July 29th at the West Branch Country Club. Details to follow. Have a good convention. Let me know what comes out of it, will you?
Thanks, Mike. I will do.
All right. Justin Tomei of MUCC, MUCC.org. That's MUCC.org. We will take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, I'm going to talk with one of the most well-known wildlife biologists when it comes to deer, especially in the country. John Ozoga is a retired DNR biologist, but he's still very much involved in deer management from a different perspective. Now, I always enjoy those conversations. And then we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's coming up in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And so glad to have you along with us. You know, it wasn't always radio how I made my living. You know, I used to be in TV news years ago and then had my own outdoor TV show. And it was the TV news experiences and that outdoor TV show that really I had a chance to do a lot of cool things, go a lot of very interesting places, meet a lot of really interesting people. But it was back in those days that I met our guest this hour. His name is John Ozoga, and at the time, he was working at the Cousino Research Station near Shingleton in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And it was my mentor, Pete Jonas. Pete knew everybody, honestly. Pete knew everybody in the outdoor industry in Michigan because Pete used to work with Morton F. and he was a member of the Michigan Outdoor Writers Association. I mean, Pete was just plugged in and dialed in, and Pete introduced me to so many interesting and cool people, including Fred Bear, including Mort Neff, including John Ozoga. And I'm thinking about deer hunting in Michigan and how it's changed over the years, and how, like, I personally have really lost my passion for deer hunting. I've lost a lot of interest in deer hunting because I just don't care about all the junk that surrounds it these days. The politics and the infighting, and it's just, I don't know. And if I was a UP deer hunter, the lack of deer would probably dissuade me from wanting to hunt as well. But I thought, with this deer management initiative thing that's out there, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and deer hunting has become a year-round deal here in Michigan, I thought it was time to check in with John and see what his thoughts are, because he has a very interesting perspective on whitetail management that the rest of us will never be able to experience that firsthand. So I called John up, and I said, hey, can you give me a few minutes? And he graciously agreed, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. John, welcome back. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Not getting any younger, but I'm doing okay.
None of us are, John. None of us are.
Well, don't forget, I spent 32 years with the DNR doing deer research. Then I spent another 30 years popularizing it and the scientific material. So it's been a long haul.
And you're still out there. I mean, I was thinking that the beautiful books that you did, Whitetail Summer and Spring and Autumn. But I saw you've done a book since then, John, a hardcover book since then.
They've recopied some of the material. What happened is I became associated closely with deer and deer hunting, and that was, like I say, 30 years ago. And they did put together a book on some of my articles.
Okay.
It's been a number of years now, but yeah, that's probably the one you're referring to. Of course, the first one I wrote was Whitetail Country, which kind of ignited the entire writing process, for me. But really, it's a long story. But in a way, it's kind of short. Back in the 1980s, the DNR, the state, went through some financial crisis, and Cousineau Wildlife Research Station that I was working at since 1964 was right on the top of the list to be eliminated to save money for the state. And I came home one day and I told my wife, I said, hey, I don't like this, but we're going to have to plan on selling this place here and leaving. We're both born in Crystal Falls. We're both real strong Upers. So I said, we're going to have to think about moving. And she says, we're suffering financial problems. And she said, what your problem is? She says, all you researchers do is talk to yourselves. What she was referring to, it just comes out in science, in the science journals that the public doesn't know anything about. And it dawned on me, she says, the public doesn't know the first thing about what you are doing. So that initiated my writing in a popular style, and I was one of the very few biologists that did such a thing in those days, and it became very, very popular. And suddenly the DNR liked it so much they took us off the list for getting rid of. But that's how it happened,
Isn't it funny how wives have the ability to see through all that other junk and cut right to the source of things sometimes?
It is. Yep. They have vision that's a little different than on the male side. I agree.
Hey, John, let's talk about Cousineau. I mean, it's what was in my mind, it was the premier whitetail research station in the country. Am I overstating that?
I don't think so. I don't think you are. It started in 1952. Actually, I think they had about 5 biologists working there in the early days. I came in 1964, but then it wasn't very long before the only biologists there were vermini. So from then on until Verm retired and I retired, that was it. We only had 2 research biologists, but we had nearly I would say very close to 100 technical research articles published from our research there. So we were contributing a lot of the early understanding of whitetail deer from a scientific perspective. But then when I retired, then I turned around, I put it in popular form. So I wound up publishing, I don't know, 6 or 7 hardcover books and a couple of soft ones. But that was now it's kind of popular. Everybody seems to be writing a book on deer. But at the time, it didn't happen, you know.
Yeah, but these people writing books on deer these days, John, they didn't have, I don't know, this facility you had, just for people who don't know, it was basically an enclosure, so you had a captive population, right?
Yeah, the enclosure was my part of the study. Vern's studies were mostly pen-confined deer, very, very controlled. But I tried to, in my enclosure, a square mile, I worked out a program where every winter I could trap every deer that was in there and hold them in confinement and mark them visually with ear tags that I could read, then release them. So I knew the history of these individual deer. I know who they were, when they were, what year they were born, who their offspring were, and that type of thing. So that gave me a great deal of opportunity to change things as I wanted them to, because we trapped them every year. So I could change that population how I wanted to. We let it build to over, I don't know, 140 per square mile or something to see what density did. So we saw the density effects there because we were supplementally feeding them in addition to natural feed. But then we started playing with the population itself. I eliminated all young males going into the population in the spring, and only mature males were in there. So I could see breeding behavior and that type of thing. And then in subsequent years, I took all the adult males out some springs and put only yearling bucks back in there. Then I could look at the result from that, because each doe that we trapped in the spring, we would X-ray to see how many young they carried, because we were doing this in March, so the fetuses were pretty good size. Then I developed techniques where I could make a very good estimate of when that doe was bred and when she had her offspring. So, we did things like that that no one else really had the the opportunity to do. But meanwhile, these deer function rather normal in their own habitat. They did their own things. They achieved their own territories. They aggress for food. They aggress for habitat occupation. They did wondrous things,
And the things that you must have learned, I got to take a break here, John, so we'll answer this after the break. But I think about the insight and the knowledge you must have gained over the years. How fascinating is that? We're talking with John Ozoga, retired DNR wildlife biologist, one of the best-known whitetail researchers in the country. Okay, you hear about all these guys these days. They've got TV shows and they write for all the magazines and stuff, and that's fine. That's well and good. But do they have the same background as John Ozoga? I'll tell you right now, no, they don't. They don't. We'll take a break. When we come back, I want to talk with John. And we've established, okay, he is the man. But I want to talk with him now after the break about where we are on whitetail management in Michigan today. This new DMI, this Deer Management Initiative, will this do any good? Are we on the right track or are we on the wrong track? And what does deer hunting look like in Michigan in the future, at least in the UP? We'll find out that from John Ozoga after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. Let's go down the coastline to Muskegon, WKBZ 1090 AM. And you can hear us on the other side of the state in Taos, WIOS 1480 AM 106.9 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. Why buy a bunch of different sets of hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set that is wind resistant, water resistant, and all you have to do, if you want a different camo pattern, is just snap on and zip on an outer shell. It takes, about a minute. Literally, I timed it once. It's about a minute. So the slogan is just change your skin for the season you're in, and it makes a lot of sense. In fact, when I was out on the river fishing the other day and it was cold, I had my VersaSkins on there, so it's not just for hunting. Check them out online at versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. If you're looking for big sizes, I'm talking 4, 5, 6X, VersaSkins is your source. If you're a saddle hunter, VersaSkins makes saddle hunting jackets as well. The website, versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. It is a Michigan-based, family-owned company, and you know I love that. We're talking right now with John Ozoga. John knows more about white-tailed deer than you or I do. He knows more about white-tailed deer than just about anybody. John, with that in mind, as you look at whitetail management, specifically in the UP here these days, what do you see? Are we going the right direction or are we going the wrong direction?
There is no management. No, it's I don't know. I guess it's all turned all political. But, you got to look at our deer population. Back around the turn of the century, here in the Upper Peninsula, we had deer. There were no deer in the rest of the country. If you wanted to hunt deer in 1900, you had to come to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Well, that, of course, has changed. Obviously, we have deer widespread now. But I think throughout, I think numbers are going down. Of course, they're definitely going down here. We had, as best estimated, our population in the Upper Peninsula grew up to about 800,000 in the early 90s. Then and since then, it's been disastrous. We've had winters that we lost a lot of deer. But I think Bob Depker hits it right on the head. He says, our population fluctuates up and down according to winter weathers. Winter weather, winter severity, and the quality of the cedar and hemlock stands determine deer welfare. There's no doubt about it. But our habitat, our winter habitat is so bad up here now, and there is no management of it. In fact, forestry has through the years, forestry has eliminated 97% of the hemlock in hardwood stands because hemlock has very little value, and if it's taken out there, you get a sugar maple or a hard maple back in there, so of something of real value. Look at Menominee County, the vast areas of cedar that have been clear cut with no concern for future reproduction of a cedar swamp. It's the areas are so large that they're going to regenerate to tag alder and marsh grass. There isn't going to be no deer yard there. So, and the quality of what we've got left is just deteriorating with no organized management, whatsoever. So, our deer numbers, under my estimation, before the white man even came here, the best data I can find is that we had about 250,000 deer in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And like I say, by early 90s, that went up to about at least 800,000. Well, since then, it's gone up and down, but the highs are getting lower, and so are the lows. So the population going right down. And I doubt very much today if we have very many deer than we did before the white man came up here. So we've managed deer for over 100 years. We began managing deer in the 30s. And we have fewer deer now than when we started. So, you know, obviously we've got some very serious problems. I'm very pessimistic. Now, if every winter was like this winter, oh, our deer herd would do fine. We're gonna have a little blip next fall. We're gonna have a few more deer. It's not, you know, although the sportsmen don't want to blame wolves, they're just a small factor. Following a severe winter, you can lose 70% of your fawns due to doe malnutrition, and it's, you know, it's quality of the habitat, the nutritional status of the doe that's going to govern our population. And we can't control the weather, of course, so we're going to have up and downs, but the quality of the deer habitat is going down steadily. There's just no doubt about it, and I'm extremely pessimistic.
So you don't think, John, that wolves are that big of a factor?
No. They take advantage of a situation. I think they're quite selective. Like most predators are going to select the weak and the vulnerable. The weak deer are the ones that are malnourished, and the vulnerable ones are the ones that don't have adequate winter habitat. You got to have the right cover, and you got to have adjacent food. And with something like a wolf, you have to have large areas. Now, back in the 80s, before we had wolves, we had 13 winters out of 15 that were mild. That's why that population built to extremely high in the early 90s. But there were deer yarding all over the place, little patches of them, and they could get by with that. But then once you had severe winters, all those little yarding populations disappeared, and you went right back to your main yards, and they're not being managed. Not for deer, certainly.
Well, and listen, I'm no expert, but I can see that if you're talking of a habitat situation, that's something that can't be corrected in the next 5 years. You're talking a long-term problem, right?
You're talking a very long-term program. You're talking about a very thought-out program and a dedicated program. Exactly. You know, cedar can grow for 300-400 years. It's a long-term thing, but it takes time to go. Now, as an example, when I came in 1964, we had relatively low deer populations in the UP, but I had the petrograde deer yard as my field study to begin with. And it was an extremely severe winter. It started in December, and it ended the end of April. I ran some surveys in that yard, and I figure I had 110 dead deer in 1 square mile.
Wow.
And there were no wolves in those days. The coyotes were eating them, but they didn't have to kill any. They had enough that were just dying, and they were feeding off the carrion there. But that population then went under management, a strict management cutting program every year up until shortly after I retired, late 90s. And we had deer yarding in there. The program then ceased. That was a forestry wildlife decision. They no longer did the cutting in there. There are no deer in there today. There are no deer in that yard there today. So when you say it's a long-term proposition, it is. It's something that you just don't do overnight. You have to set up an extremely long program and stay with it. So I don't think it's possible. I don't think we'll do it.
John, I'm curious, this deer management initiative group that is designed to be, I don't know, to at least give input into how we're going to manage deer. Did you apply for that at all?
Did I? No.
Because I think your input would have been very valuable in that.
No, I did not. That just wasn't my thing. I loved my research. I had a lot of freedom. But I did retire early. I did retire at 55. But I could see the political thing coming, the control, and I just didn't agree with what I foresaw. So it has changed a great deal. There is no deer research in the state now. When I started, you had the Cousino Station, you had the Houghton Lake Station, and you had the Rose Lake Station, all there doing some deer research. There's no field research of deer now. No.
Well, and that's interesting because, deer hunting has always been a big deal here in Michigan, but lately, this past, it's become almost a religion. Or has it always been that way, John?
I think it's always been that way, but we're losing hunters like mad. Here in the Upper Peninsula, I think at our peak when we had 800,000 deer, I think we had something like 130, 140,000 deer hunters. We only have about half that many now. Of course, our deer population is low, and it's pretty. How can you recruit new hunters if they got to go sit out there, sit on a stump for 2 weeks and not even see a deer? It's not going to happen. Our younger generations aren't going to take to this kind of a thing. I don't see it. I don't see us replacing those hunters, and I don't see the interest there. In fact, what about all the anti-gun legislation that's going on? I don't see anything that's very optimistic for deer hunting. I don't see anything very optimistic for hunting in general.
I got to take another break. Can you stick around a few more minutes, John? I'd like to follow up on this.
I'm not going anywhere.
John Ozoga, I love talking with John, so we'll take a break here at the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll give John Ozoga the coveted third segment. Look, when I get a chance to talk with somebody of the status of a John Ozoga, and he's got the time, believe me, I'm going to take advantage of it. And then, of course, after that, we will check in with my good friend, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Dave was at our Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction last weekend. He was our guest of honor, and it was a pleasure to have him there, and it's a pleasure to have him on the radio show as well. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. More from John Ozoga after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. And you can hear us in Saginaw on WSGW AM 790 and FM 100.5. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. I'm here with Charlie Rood. Charlie doing a wonderful job as always. And a couple vehicles out there. Charlie. They know that the... Charlie Rood. They know Charlie Rood as a broadcasting legend, as do I. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard, as they have for me. In fact, the guys from Reader were at my house just last week. They were doing some winter season dormant pruning. I got these trees at the corner of the house that just want to grow like crazy. The guys from Reader keep coming back and cutting them down. Well, not cutting them down, cutting them back. Well, they came back this winter season, and they cut them back nice, and they look great. And the guys were there all day long, 2 of them working hard, as they always do. I'm telling you, the Reader crews do a great job. I would encourage you. Oh, and also, listen to this. The morning of our Trinity dinner, I got a text from Paul Reader. He said, Mike, I heard about your dinner. Can I offer up some gift certificates for the event? Yes, Paul. Thank you very much. That's the type of people you're dealing with when you're dealing with Reader Landscaping. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. We're wrapping up our conversation right now with John Ozoga. John, a retired DNR wildlife biologist who for many years was in charge of the Cousino Research Station, a facility that this country's probably never seen anything like it. So over that period of time, John learned more about white-tailed deer maybe than anybody ever. So, John, when I asked you what the future, in your opinion, what the future of deer hunting looks like in Michigan, what's your answer?
Well, you'll see a blipping deer herd. You'll have highs, you'll have lows. But the lows are getting lower, and so are the highs. So we're on a downward trend. And it's all controlled by winter habitat and winter weather. You got to realize that during a severe winter, and you get doe malnourishment, even if they don't die, they're pregnant and they have fawns, you're going to lose 70% of those fawns at birth or soon after. A malnourished doe won't even protect her fawns. She'll abandon them. And those fawns will weigh like maybe 2-3 pounds. They should weigh 7-8 pounds. That's what controls our deer herd. We have starvation losses in the winter of deer too, and we have predation too. But that loss of newborn fawns is far more significant than any other mortality factor.
I would think in the short term there's good news this year, though, because the winter hasn't been that rough, right?
Oh, excellent. Yeah, if every winter was like this, our deer situation would be extremely different, believe me. I've never seen one like this here in Munising. It's rather unbelievable. And this is one of those winters where those deer are going to be all over the place, not confined to traditional yarding cover, but they're going to have a lot of freedom. So you're going to see a blip, but our population is so low now that it's not going to be a real obvious one next winter.
So
next deer season
is the heyday of deer hunting in the UP? Are those days gone for the foreseeable future?
Absolutely, they are gone. Yes, they are. In fact, it's coincidental, but deer populations across the United States in general are slowly declining. They have declined rather sharply here in the UP. They've declined sharply in northern Wisconsin. They've declined sharply in northern Minnesota. And it's multiple factors, obviously. But in those declines, it's strictly winter weather and winter habitat. Now, why? I suppose in other areas, disease factors and other things are taking place. But here in northern Michigan, it's winter habitat quality and malnourishment of deer.
John, always a pleasure to talk with you. I love your insight. I respect your opinions. I respect your experience, and thanks for all that you've done over the years.
Well, thank you. I wish hunters a lot of luck, but I'm like I say, I'm not very optimistic.
Well, and when you speak, John Ozoga, about deer, the world listens, or at least we should listen.
Yeah, well, I hope so, but I'm rather doubtful. Like I say, I've written 7 books and 600 magazine articles, and what do my local neighbors tell me? It's wolves. It's all wolves that are the problem. They don't understand deer. They just don't understand deer. I don't know if they want to. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I do find it interesting, John, when you talk about the wolves, because downstate, that's what I hear from people. It's the wolves, it's the wolves, it's the wolves. So to get your perspective.
That's a visible thing. Why don't they talk about the malnourished thousands, hundreds of thousands of fawns that might die following a tough winter? They don't see them. That's why,
Yeah. John, always a pleasure. You and I could talk for 2 hours, but I'm out of time. I got to let you go. Take care of yourself, and I'll look forward to talking to you again.
Appreciate talking to you, so take care.
All righty. John Ozoga here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. You will not talk with a man. Well, let me rephrase. I have not talked with a man and do not anticipate ever talking with a man who knows as much about white-tailed deer as John Ozoga. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. Sure appreciate you being along with us this week. Wouldn't be able to do this without you. And I do enjoy it, you know that. I have been blessed to work with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar for so many years. I was also very fortunate and blessed to be able to see Dave and his wife Terry at our big Trinity Monitor wild game dinner and auction last week. Dave was our guest of honor. He's with us now, of course, on the Outdoor Magazine phone line because he helps us wrap up each week's show. David, welcome back. How are you?
Pretty good, Michael, and yourself?
I'm doing real good. It was so nice to see you guys there, Dave. It was really nice. You're looking good. Your back feeling a little better. The surgery worked out pretty good.
Yep. The surgery helped out quite a bit, and I'm feeling a lot better.
Good. Now
More energetic.
Good. and you will be. Are you going to join us on the 20th for our Wednesday night live at the LumberJack Restaurant in West Branch?
Yep. We got a reservation right away as soon as we heard about it. I think we have 8 people coming.
Well, okay, so you've got a group of people there. Let me ask you this. How would you feel about doing some cooking that night?
I could.
You'd be open?
They let me use their kitchen?
Well, here's the deal. I just got a text from Emil Rousseau of the LumberJack Restaurant, and he posed this question to me. He said, do you think Dave would be interested in being a guest chef that night?
Oh, boy, yeah. I could go up and talk to him and meet him and see what kind of food they got there and what we could come up with.
I think that is a great idea. Now, I don't know what Emil's got in mind, but he threw out the option that if you want to be a part of that event, not just a guest, but cooking that night, he'd love to work with you.
Oh, boy, that would be wonderful. I think I would enjoy that a lot.
Oh, that would be outstanding. Oh, this is great. So if people can join us Wednesday night, the 20th, at the LumberJack Restaurant for our usual deal, but also, once again, get a chance to taste some Dixie Dave cooking at the LumberJack. I think this is a win-win.
I think so, too. I'd have a good time at it.
Oh, that's outstanding. So you and Emil talk, and you let me know what you come up with, and whatever you guys come up with, I'm in.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks a lot for the offer.
Oh, that's from Emil. I mean, I support it 100%, but he came up with the idea, and I think it's a great idea.
Me too.
Oh,
Thank you for...
Well, that is so cool. So listen, so we'll plan on this. So just to promote the event again, it is Wednesday night, July 20th at the LumberJack. March 20th. Here we go. March 20th. Charlie looked at me like, July 20th? What are you talking about? It's Wednesday, March 20th at the LumberJack Restaurant in West Branch, the Forward Corporation LumberJack Restaurant in West Branch. Reservations are required. Call 989-343-0892. 989-343-0892 for reservations. There's no cost for the reservation, but of course you've got to buy your own dinner. And we just found out that in addition to the wonderful LumberJack meals, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar is also going to be part of the event, cooking for us once again. And David, honestly, I could not be more excited about this.
Me too. It's been a while since I've been in the kitchen.
You up to it? Can you handle it?
Oh, I'm sure I can.
Can you remember how to do it?
Absolutely. I'll have to call Emil to find out what he's got in mind.
Yeah, and I don't know what the details are, but just to know that you're going to be there with us, and Emil used the term guest chef, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Michael.
I didn't do it. Emil did it.
Okay, I'll call him. I'll give him a holler today.
All right. That sounds good. Oh, I'm looking forward to this, Dave. Wednesday, March 20th at the LumberJack in West Branch. Again, the number 989-343-0892 for reservations. If nobody picks up, keep calling. Let it ring and ring and ring because eventually it'll get picked up if nobody's there. So, Dave, you're going to be there with us. Also, I've got Brad Dupuis, Mr. Angler Quest, is going to join us. I'm working on some other advertising partners as well. I don't know exactly who's going to be there. Possibly Paul Phillips, Extreme Long Range Shooter Extraordinaire, will join us as well.
Oh.
And, Dave, you've been at these before. They're a lot of fun.
Oh, I had a ball. Somebody at our table, they won stuff, too, there the last time.
So this is great. Listen, the Trinity dinner, by the way, I want to talk about this a little bit. The Trinity dinner this year was a little different because you weren't our main chef, but you were a guest of honor. And I thought the event was wonderful, Dave, and I appreciate the fact that you guys could join us. It's just a well-run machine. The folks at Trinity, our volunteers, do a wonderful job, and I'm so glad you could join us for that.
They do, though. It's just a pleasure to watch how things go in such an orderly fashion.
Well, I'm glad they look that way because I can tell you they don't always feel like it. But as long as it comes across that way, that's all that matters.
Okay.
All right, David, listen, I'm so excited about this. I look forward to seeing you Wednesday, March 20th at the LumberJack as our guest chef. We'll talk more about it next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Again, the number to call, 989-343-0892, 989-343-0892 for reservations. You just heard Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar is going to be our guest chef that night. Again, what that involves, I don't know. This just came up literally 10 minutes ago. I just found out about the opportunity. I said, Emil, do you mind if I pose this to Dave on the air? And he said, go for it. And I think Dave liked the idea. 989-343-0892 for reservations to join us for Wednesday Night Live at the LumberJack Restaurant in West Branch. My name is Mike Avery. This is Outdoor Magazine. My email address, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great week, my friends.